Oh, we're live. Hello, everybody. How are you? Let us know in the comments if you're watching live so we can say hello to you. My name is Jennifer Longmore. If you don't already know, I am the founder of the #1 Akashic Record Training School in the world and crazy serial entrepreneur. And this is the wonderful Elise, who is a master of many things. She's a master of quantum leaps and making lots of money, and a breathwork facilitator and teacher. And today we're going to talk about how breathwork can help you expand your income. So, hello, Elise. How are you doing?
I am great. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk about this because this is one of these things that, I can talk about all day. So excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I'm noticing you have a nice summer glow. I know you just got back from California.
I do. I was like, do I look too red? I'm also kind of hot, but yes, I do definitely have a tan going right now. Usually at this time of year, I definitely have a tan going. So it's my favorite time.
Yeah, I feel you. We're heading into Virgo season, which is my season. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm a Leo rising, Virgo sun. So these two seasons are good for me. But I hear you on that. I haven't gotten as much sun this year as I would have liked to, but it is what it is. So next time I'll come with you.
Oh, that would be great, actually.
So for those of you that don't know Elise, I know Elise very well. She is a very, very clear channel. She is very awake and aware of what's going on in the world and still choosing to show up and out-create that because she's focusing her energy on creating and expanding and helping other people expand. And you have been, geez, if I remember, you've been doing breath work for what, 2 decades?
Yeah, a little more than that at this point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you've, trained with various people and you've tried different techniques, and now you've created your own unique, I guess, methodology, we'll call it, that you teach other people how to do. And one of the things that people don't realize when they come into your world is things accelerate very quickly. You just have that coding. You're definitely an accelerator. So for people that like to move quickly, for people that either like to move through their stuff quickly or to make money quickly, when they step into your world, that happens in a way that they can't even imagine, nor can you imagine, right? Based on the conversations we've had. So I think most people, it's kind of a buzzword to be talking about trauma. And that's also something, by the way, Elise and I are both actually clinically, professionally trained, designated as mental health people to deal with trauma. We didn't take a weekend workshop and now offer it as a service. We have a lot of experience with this. So we definitely know how much trauma can impact our capacity to increase the volume in our programs, for example, because we can unknowingly be contracted around receiving more people, as an example, in our containers. So even though we might know the container has the capacity to serve, let's say, 100 people, we might consistently get 10 or 15 people signing up because there's typically a trauma response there. Of course, it can be messaging and pricing and all kinds of things. But, all things being equal, when we can't figure it out, it's usually related to trauma. Yes. We know that what stands between people's current income level and their next income level often relates to trauma. And really anything, right? When in doubt, if the actual tactical things are not working, it's at least good to check in on the trauma response to various things and unpack that. And for some of us, we love to be in therapy for 20 years. And by we, I don't mean me, because that is not appealing to me to be in talk therapy for 20 years, even though that is valuable for some people. And I know that's the case for you. And there's something about breath work where you get to kind of go through your own process and release stuff without having to unpack it and relive it and do an archaeological dig for hours at a time. It's something that actually can transmute very quickly. So can you share some examples that come to mind around what's happened when people have come in not doing breath work and then all of a sudden they're doing breath work and the kind of things that are happening in their business?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, there's a couple of things that I like to explain that are always happening when we're doing breath work, right? So there's two main things that I want to point out just so everyone can kind of understand what this really is and kind of feel into it. So what's happening is first of all, when we do the breath, when we're consciously connecting to our breath, we're forcing ourselves into the present moment. Because if you think about it, you can't take a breath in the past and you can't take a breath in the future. So when you're focusing on your breath, you're forcing yourself into the present moment. And the present moment is the quantum field where infinite possibilities exist. So the more we're consciously using the breath and we're connecting with it, we're connecting ourselves with the quantum field, the field of infinite possibility. So I find that for a lot of people, when they start to do the breath work, even though they might not be intending it, possibilities start opening up for them and things start happening that they previously didn't think were possible or even think were in the realm of what they could do or create. So things start showing up that they never would have expected, that are in alignment with the version of themselves that they kind of always knew they could be, but didn't know exactly how to get there, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when we use the breath, we're moving energy. And when we move energy in the body, things start to shift and change because, you know, as a former school counselor, one of the things that always perplexed me was that we don't teach anywhere in our culture how to deal with emotions. And as human beings, we are emotional people. That is our nature. That is how we experience reality, is through emotions. But we're either taught that emotions are inconvenient or uncomfortable and that we shouldn't show them or deal with them. So mostly what is modeled to us is to suppress them. So many of us are walking around with a ton of suppressed emotional energy that we haven't yet dealt with. So when we start to move energy in the body, naturally that emotional energy comes up and starts to be released. And instead of living in reaction to the past because of that stuck emotional energy in the body, we start living in present time and are able to actually be in the present moment and have an experience of ourselves, our true nature, and what's actually happening in the present moment. And then also we start to have an awareness of things in our subconscious mind that we weren't previously aware of, like limiting beliefs, old programming from the past, things we picked up from our parents that we're operating from, these subconscious beliefs that are kind of driving the bus that we're experiencing in our reality that we weren't even previously aware of that we had. Because what happens with the breath is we dip into the subconscious and we start to become aware of things that we weren't previously aware of. Like, for example, if your parents had a belief about money, that money was hard to come by, or money is always a struggle, or money is always something that we never have enough of, you might have heard them say these things, or you might even have just felt them feel these things, right? As kids, we're sponges, right? And we pick up on the emotional energy, even if it's not being said, but we're not even aware of it as kids. So we don't even know that we're picking up on this, and we internalize it as our reality because that's what we are experiencing in the world. So you might have a subconscious belief because of your parents that money always has to be a struggle. And when you use the breath, you're able to kind of tap into that. And all of a sudden you might have this memory of like you being in the car with your parents and your parents talking about money, and you kind of internalizing or taking on this belief. And then what happens is you realize, wait, that's actually not my belief. I don't have to subscribe to this, and I can choose out of it. And then you become aware that that's just a pattern of thought. It's not who you are. It's not reality. So when it comes up, you can say, oh, that's that pattern of thought. That's not actually real. And I can choose something different. So there's a lot going on when we use the breath because it gives us access to so much more than we're just seeing, in our everyday reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I know I just happen to I have a very insider's view into your company and the kind of results that you're getting for people. I know that oftentimes just people coming into your world, they're making money while they're on a call with you. Like sales are coming in that they didn't expect while they're on a coaching call with you. And then on top of that, you have this way of helping them transmute that. I think one of the things you and I talk about a lot, and I know this will hit home for a lot of you watching, this is something that I end up kind of weirdly specializing in as well, is When we're dealing with either being raised by narcissistic parents or caregivers, whoever's raising us, or having a significant impact on our lives, that can really impact our money. When we're dealing with addictive personalities and codependent personalities that want to enmesh with us or love bomb us or any of that kind of stuff, that's also going to bring up some money issues. So if we're dealing with that deeper stuff, right, that real patterning that then causes us to be in massive servitude in our company, where we're over delivering, because of course with a narcissistic parent, you can never pour into them enough. You're never enough. You're never doing enough for them. You're never attentive enough. It's your job to be a parentified little 5-year-old, essentially, right, caring for your parents. And then the addictive parents, of course, they're always deflecting and diverting and abdicating responsibility. And then you're having to be overly responsible, and you don't want to bring on more clients when you already feel an immense responsibility for the 5 people in your roster, but meanwhile you maybe want 20 people in your roster, that kind of thing. So how does breathwork help with shifting the conscious and unconscious patterns that are inherent with being raised by a narcissist and or an addict?
Well, first of all, it helps you have the awareness of that pattern and when it started in childhood, right? So one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is when we look at these dynamics with our parents, right? For example, the narcissistic mother. One of the things that people have a lot of trouble with is your mother, right, is usually one of these people in your life, or the person in your life that you probably love the most and feel the most connection with, at least at certain points in your life, and the person that hurt you the most. So people have a hard time kind of reconciling that and admitting to themselves that this person that took care of them, that provided for them, that loved them, and that probably told them, I'm doing all these things for you, you should appreciate me, right, is also the person that hurt them the most. So it can be hard to actually get to the place where you fully acknowledge how you actually felt about and within the relationship with your mother or father, right? But for this example, we're using the mother. So breathwork can help you actually get to the place where you are being 100% honest and real with yourself about what your actual experience was as a child and how you are projecting that onto your current reality. For example, we're using your business, right? Where it might feel uncomfortable for you to bring more people in because you're like, on some level, right? That young child within you is like, I can't bring these people in. They're going to criticize me. I'm going to be emotionally responsible for them. I'm going to have to manage their craziness just like I did when I was a child, right? So the breath work, when you do it, it helps you access that version of yourself that had that experience so you can fully acknowledge what happened and how you felt and what that patterning is so that you can not only release it, because it's not just about releasing it. Like, yes, we release it on some level, but it's about the awareness and acknowledgement of it so that you can change your relationship to it so that you're not operating from a place of believing that it's true or getting swept up in the wave of it. You can actually see it for what it is and be like, okay, I understand what's happening right now. This is my patterning that I can choose out of. And the breath work, again, like I said, it gives you access to that subconscious mind, right? That version of yourself, that 5-year-old or that 4-year-old that felt that way, that had that experience, that not only are you not acknowledging, but I think what happens with a lot of people is they have these ways where they kind of, they're like, well, I understand why my mom was like that, or I understand why she did that. And as an adult, you do, right? You do get it and you do understand. But as a child, you were hurt. You felt ignored. You felt like your needs weren't met. And you have to acknowledge that and face that, confront that in order to shift it. And that's what the breath work really gives you the space to do. And what I see with people is that once they start using the breath work, especially in the beginning, they'll get a ton of momentum, like new clients coming in, new awarenesses, their relationships start changing without them even realizing it, right? Like I have so many people that their relationship with their partner just gets astronomically better, just because they're doing the breath work. They're not even trying to make it better, right? But they automatically feel a deeper level of connection. They're not playing out the same patterns, right? So you get a ton of momentum, but also you start to have these deeper awarenesses of what I'm saying, like the things that happen when you're a child, when you were a child, and how you really felt about it, and how all of these things kind of started. And you can kind of get this wider perspective of understanding of why these things are playing out, and also having compassion for yourself. And I know that sounds simple, but it's actually one of the hardest things I think any of us can do, is have compassion for yourself, because of how you felt when you were growing up and the coping mechanisms that you created to deal with what happened when you were growing up, right? And having compassion for, you know what, this is what my experience was. I've been doing the best that I possibly can. So I'm going to have compassion for myself. And in doing that, what happens is you kind of embrace your shadow, in a sense. Like, you're, instead of taking this piece of yourself and hiding it away because you feel ashamed of it, you embrace it. And what happens is you like experience this new level of integration, and then you become super magnetic because you're fully loving and embracing yourself. And that creates an energy that people are attracted to.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about trauma in business. So what I mean by that, so those of us that have been an OG in the online space for many years have had the opportunity to observe a lot of tactics and so on evolve over time. And in the course of doing business, we, in the beginning, you have all of your firsts, right? Your first client that doesn't pay you, your first no-show, your first whatever, all the things that you don't know how to respond to, good or bad, right? And then we have certain things that will create, I'll say, trauma in the body, right? So there's a lot of people that want to be the victim of their own choices and hire coaches that they didn't bother to research, or they didn't honor their intuition, and they want to go online and tell everyone that this person's a big a-hole and whatever. And that may be true. And right, we're not a victim of our choices, right? But that is a trauma response.
Yeah.
And but anyways, people will create a story that says all coaches are going to screw me over, and they know that they need some help to move the needle, but then they don't hire someone because they're expecting the past to repeat itself based on one person, or maybe a few. Now, if it's a few people, by the way, then we really need to look at what you're doing to keep hiring mentors that magically can't help you. That being said, we have team members. I had a team member way back in the day who was serving a whole bunch of us, and they literally screwed the back end of all of our businesses, like $20,000 worth of damage to repair and do all that stuff. So needless to say, this was, of course, way back in the day, but I was a little gun shy around hiring a new team because I was unconsciously sort of waiting to be screwed over again. But meanwhile, if I'm honest with myself, I intuitively knew that I shouldn't have even hired them, let alone I was ignoring the messages of getting rid of them, because of course we as intuitive beings still wait for the empirical evidence to show us why we're having the feeling before we make the decision. And it's usually only after we make the decision that it appears. I've heard many people have, they get chargebacks on PayPal, and they're nervous about taking on clients because they're waiting for everyone to do a chargeback. Or they, I'm trying to think, getting threatened with lawsuits, people having their IP taken and all the legal stuff that can be involved in that, paying people and having them ghost you and literally take your money. I mean, there's a gazillion examples, right? Team members that commit time theft. I could go on and on, but we create all these little stories as entrepreneurs. And this isn't because we've necessarily done anything, by the way, for everyone watching. It's just, sometimes we haven't decided that we're not willing to learn valuable business lessons without having to pay a high price, right? So once we decide that that's no longer going to be our way, then we magically can just learn them without, losing money, so to speak. So we've talked about the trauma that we're already bringing into the business, but what about, how does breathwork help us with those kind of traumas that I'm talking about, where we we're growth mindset oriented people. We want to keep growing, and yet we push and pull with growth because we're expecting the past to repeat itself as it has been in our business up until now.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, there's two things I would say. First of all, I think the breath is so powerful at these times because it brings you into the present moment, like I said, and it brings you back to yourself. Because there's always, and my clients get annoyed at me for this because I'm always bringing it back to you, right? Like I always say to people, listen, I could commiserate with you all day. If you want to talk like about what happened and this other person longer, I'll listen to you, but it's not going to contribute to your growth, right? What's going to contribute to your growth is if we talked about what this means for you and what this experience meant for you and how we can move forward based on that, right? So, and not to say like, I don't want to oversimplify it and be like, oh, well, everything that happens is because you created it because of your karma or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there's always something in it for you. And there's always like a deeper reason why that experience happened. Whether it is, like you said, you didn't listen to your intuition. And when you look back, you know, hey, that was my intuition telling me that, right? Like I knew, like, for example, we just went to California, and as we were getting on the plane, I was having terrible anxiety and I couldn't exactly pinpoint why. And then a number of things happened on the trip that were unforeseen things that would give me anxiety. And like looking back, I'm like, that was my intuition kind of like telling me like this trip isn't going to be what I thought it was going to be, So just little examples like that, even where you're kind of being shown something by that experience. So the breath, when you use it as a tool and you use it regularly, it's this incredibly powerful opportunity to come back to yourself and really gain insight and understanding into why things have happened on a deeper level. Because what the breath is doing is it's really connecting you to your soul, to your higher self, to this part of you, your consciousness, and this part of you that I always say that always knows, right? Always knows the answer, always has that higher understanding. So whenever these things happen, there's always something in it for you. Even if it seems like it was totally crazy and you don't understand why it happened, usually after everything's said and done and you look back, you're like, I understand why that happened, And when we use the breath, it kind of brings us to that place of this like higher understanding, this deeper level of connection with yourself, where you're probably going to gain some kind of insight as to why that occurred, even if it's not in that moment, right? Like maybe in that moment, you just need to come back to a place of trust or come back to a place of connection. But eventually you will have that higher understanding of why that happened. So, and I get that there are things that happen in business that are traumatic, but usually those things kind of like force you in another direction, right? They kind of force you to take a turn or to look at maybe your boundaries, right? Which I always joke, it's like every time I grow, which is a lot, I'm always having to set stronger boundaries or raise my boundaries or whatever. So maybe it was inviting you to set stronger boundaries, or maybe it was inviting you to turn in a different direction or look at the way that you relate to the people that work for you or whatever it is. It's always inviting you to look deeper, to change what you're doing or to change your direction. So even though it feels traumatic in the moment, it's always like there's always a deeper reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm also thinking about, especially over the last 2+ years, we've had a lot of trauma bonding in the awakened community, right? So as much as we may resonate with certain people, there's also a degree of trauma bonding. And we see that with colleagues, and then all of a sudden, maybe there's a split, right? There's a faction, as Dr. Robin would call it, where in crisis, people will divide. And we also see that by way of the clients that are coming to us, where they're trying to trauma bond with us. They don't know it. It's not to blame them. And we don't necessarily see it coming. But I'm thinking about how service providers can really get impacted when a client all of a sudden castrates them or turns on them, or anytime someone love bombs me. I mean, that's a pretty bright orange flag at the very least. It's not likely you're going to get into my world if you're love bombing me. And I'm just thinking of, again, just different stories I've heard from people over the last 2 years in particular. Of course, this existed before, where there's like this immense bonding, for example, and then all of a sudden, a group totally divides if you're leading a group program, or a really close one-on-one client who you adore and you're really rooting for, all of a sudden ghosts you, and you keep trying to reach out to them and they don't, all the things, right? We all know this, for any of us that have been around for a while. And then even if you consider people like you and I, Elise, that we are trauma informed, we have quite a lot of experience in that. And so people will tend to reach out to us. And it's one thing to work on trauma. And then for people like you and I that are really calm, actually, like in my mind, there's nothing 911 about business, literally nothing. Mm-hmm. Please do not bring your category 5 tsunami to my doorstep. We're not doing that here. Go bring it down to a category 1, and then you can knock on my door and I'll see if this is a good fit. But category 5, no, we can't do that here, right? Just because we can deal with trauma doesn't mean we have to. There's some people that are just not ready to receive yet and not ready to transmute that. So whether it be people that where there's a level of intensity, we all know that, right? There's a level of intensity people can bring to our doorstep, and then we're stuck going, well, I want to help them and I know I can help them, but how do I do that? And then additionally, with the various personalities and coping mechanisms and projections that we have to deal with as service providers. How does breathwork help us with that, to be able to continue to want to serve people and to have full programs and to keep allowing people in and to keep expanding our essence without getting consumed by other people's devouring of us or any host of things that they might bring to our doorstep?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the biggest things, because so many of us who are really good at what they do and who can help people, this is something that I resonate with so much, because I see people who are dealing with trauma, and automatically my first response, especially with my background as a school counselor and so much experience in trauma that I have, I automatically am just like, I can help you. And I see exactly how I can help you. However, I think one of the most powerful things about breath work is that I would take a moment and do some breath work before I respond to that, because I need to know, even though I can help you, is it in your highest good and is it in my highest good, right? Because if you're not able to, for example, like you said, receive from me because you're still kind of in a space where, that person can't receive, or it's not going to be in the highest good of my energy because, I have to maintain a certain level of energy to serve the people that I serve and to run the various programs that I run and all of that. So using the breath really, again, brings you back to yourself, so you can see what is in your highest good and what's in alignment with your highest timeline and what you know that you want to step into, versus reacting based on the past or based on a pattern or based on your own trauma response too, right? Because sometimes when we see other people in trauma, it can be a trauma response from us where we're like, I have to help you. But is that in their highest good, or is that my need that I feel like I need to help you in order for me to feel better? Because a lot of that, bringing it back to like that narcissistic mother pattern that I know a lot of us can relate to, we actually felt like we needed to help our mom so that our needs could get met. Because if we see a mother or a parent in crisis, our first thought is, well, if they're not okay, then I'm not going to survive. So if I don't make sure that they're okay, then I'm in danger. So our trauma response is to make sure this other person is okay. So when we use the breath work, we can bring it back to ourselves, bring it back to that connection to our higher self, our soul, and what is truly in alignment with where we're going and what we know is our highest timeline and what we're supposed to be doing versus having that reaction.
I love that. I know there's a lot of people watching right now, and I know a lot of you know Elise. So if you have worked with Elise, let everyone know in the comments why she is a solid person to reach out to. I think most people know when I bring people onto my platform, and I rarely do this on my podcasts. You're not getting on there unless I personally invite you, because I need to know that you're either a 7-figure earner, or I need to know that you're a clear channel, right? If you're coming onto the Great Awakening. And then in this platform, I'm only bringing people on that I feel very, very comfortable referring business to, because I am a 6-2 generator, for those of you that don't know that. So my standards are really high. They're really high. And I'm a Virgo, so you're welcome. Just playing around. But I have a very, I have a strong sense of duty of care for people, and making sure that they're introduced to people that are solid, that do the work, that are aligned, and their results are reflective of their actual message, and they're walking the talk. So Elise is definitely one of those people, and she's not going to say this herself because she's very humble, and you can see she's already blushing. So, with that in mind, before we wrap up for today, I know people want to hear more, because I think we could go on about this forever. But the reality is, I've seen it a million times with people moving in and out of your world, where it doesn't have to make sense. And I think most of us as entrepreneurs, especially those of us that are established, appreciate having these experiences, right? We actually don't begrudge them in the moment. Yeah, they're a little bit crunchy at times, but we actually can definitely laugh about previous business experiences, and additionally what we've learned. Because sometimes the only way to stop a pattern in business when we're running our companies is to learn it in a way that, packs a punch. Let's put it that way, right? So we don't repeat it. So there's that piece, but I definitely have seen an immense, like, your success rates are really crazy high as far as the amount of amplification of client attraction and money and profitability and so on. I've seen you take people in a short period of time from having a corporate job that they were really reluctant to quit and start a business, to all of a sudden having like multiple 5-figure months in record time and so on. So there is something to this, right? And for those of you that recognize that it really is a lot about frequency, and that all the tactics in the world are only going to take you as far as the level of leadership that you're holding, and the shift that you make from being a manager in your life and your business to being a CEO in your life and business. And so anyways, Elise holds the key that may be unlocking your next level. So how can people get in touch with you?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for all of that. So you can get in touch with me. My website, elisebreathes.com. Also, Instagram at Elise_breathes. And then I also have a Facebook group called Breathe to Succeed. And then I have my podcast called Reclaiming Consciousness, which everyone seems to be loving lately. So you can definitely check that out as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you can do me a favor, Elise, and plunk links to those in the chat after we finish up for today, that would be awesome. So for those of you watching live, thank you for being here. Thank you for saying hello. We're going to come back in the comments and say hello to all of you. And for those of you that are watching the replay, let us know in the comments, and especially if it's your first time, because we'll definitely want to give you a warm welcome. You'll know how to follow Elise. You're already connected with me, and I'll see you again in a few weeks to introduce you to someone else that can support you in your business growth. So between now and then, have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.